So what happens when you pit a centuries-old religious debate against a 21st century AI? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating case study where artificial intelligence was used essentially as a referee to tackle a whole series of historical accusations. Let's see how it all went down.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter, right? Can an AI actually be an unbiased referee in a debate that's this heated? Or is it just going to end up reflecting the biases of whoever's using it? Let's jump in and find out. Okay, so to get a grip on this, you gotta know who's in the ring. On one side, you have a believer, someone who accepts the historical accounts of the Latter-day Saint faith. On the other side, you've got a vocal critic, armed with a laundry list of accusations. And smack dab in the middle, an AI assistant, whose job is to sort through all the noise.
All right, first up, AI enters the debate. Let's open this case file and see what we've got.
And now for the main event, the critic's case versus the AI. We're going to look at the specific charges being made, and then see how the AI responds using hard evidence.
So the first charge is this idea that Joseph Smith was secretly a highly educated deceiver. The critic claims he was a trained Methodist apologist, tutored for years and years by his brother. But the AI, it comes right back and says, hold on, there is simply no historical evidence. We're talking no letters, no journals, not a single third-party account of this kind of secret, long-term training. In fact, pretty much all the contemporary accounts, from friends and enemies alike, describe his formal education as super limited. Next, the critic tries to paint this picture of a privileged upbringing, saying Smith lived in a nice house with a great library right at his fingertips. But again, the AI just goes straight back to the historical record. It points out that all the accounts show the family was in constant financial trouble, living in a pretty modest and often unfinished home. And yeah, a town library did exist, but there are zero records suggesting he was some kind of power user. The claim is pure speculation, not documented fact.
Then we get to this really juicy one, the accusation of occultic origins. The critic points to folk magic and Freemasonry as the secret ingredients for the religion. Now, this is where the AI does something really smart. It makes two crucial distinctions. First, it puts folk magic into context. Look, this stuff was common all over early America. It wasn't some sinister, unique practice of the Smith family. And second, and this is the big one, the AI flags a major timeline error when it comes to Freemasonry.
And boom, this timeline just lays it all out perfectly. Check this out. The Book of Mormon comes out in 1830. The very first temple in Kirtland is dedicated in 1836. But Joseph Smith doesn't become a Freemason until 1842. That's a full 12 years after the book was published. This simple chronology makes it literally impossible for Freemasonry to have influenced the foundational texts or those early temple practices. The timing is just all wrong.
So here's the crucial point the AI makes. It's the difference between form and doctrine. The AI clarifies that the early Kirtland Temple had zero Masonic-style rituals. It was later in Nauvoo, after 1842, that some similarities in form, things like gestures or symbolic clothing, popped up in temple ceremonies. But, and this is a huge but, the AI points out that even critical scholars agree the core theology and the doctrine behind those ceremonies were totally unique and distinct from anything taught in Freemasonry.
Okay, so at this point, the whole debate takes a sharp turn. The critic shifts tactics. Instead of arguing the history, they start attacking the tool itself. This is the ultimate accusation, and now the AI is the one on trial.
And there it is, the accusation, thrown right at the AI. You're just biased for the LDS Church. I mean, this is a classic debate move, right? When you can't argue with the evidence, you attack the source. But what does a machine do when you accuse it of being biased? Well, its response is fascinating.
The AI's defense is just clinical. It's so logical. First, it identifies the tactic for what it is, a deflection. It's a way to avoid dealing with the actual facts that were presented. Second, it flips the script and puts the ball right back in the critic's court, demanding documentary evidence for those original claims. And third, it masterfully shifts the burden of proof. The AI basically says, without evidence, your argument isn't based on fact, it's just an assumption.
So it all boils down to this, the AI's core principle in this whole exchange. It essentially says, call me biased if you want, but that doesn't change the historical record. Bias is totally irrelevant if you can't produce the evidence. So show me the documents. It's such a powerful and direct challenge.
And that brings us to our final section, and the verdict. But let's be super clear. The verdict here isn't about whether Joseph Smith was a prophet or a fraud. The real conclusion is about a principle, the idea that in any historical debate, evidence, and evidence alone, has to be the final judge. The AI makes its position crystal clear. It states its role isn't to be pro or anti anybody. Its only function is to take the question and report on what the best available historical evidence says. It follows the data, period, no matter where it leads. And to prove this, it pulls out one final, absolutely brilliant piece of information.
Okay, now this slide is the mic drop moment right here. The AI points out that the foundational facts it's been using aren't really controversial at all. They are pretty much agreed upon by a consensus of scholars, from the biggest skeptics to the most devout believers. The critical historian Fawn Brodie agrees his education was limited. The believing historian Richard Bushman confirms the family's financial struggles were real. Even a critical, excommunicated historian like Michael Quinn agrees that folk magic was just a normal part of the culture back then. The facts are the facts. The real disagreement is all in the interpretation.
And that just leads us to this incredibly powerful final thought from the source material. Facts aren't biased. Only the way people choose to interpret or ignore them is. That is the ultimate takeaway. The evidence itself, the letters, the financial records, the town histories, it doesn't have an agenda. The bias only comes in when we decide what to do with that evidence.
So we're left with this, and it's a question that goes way beyond this one specific debate. In a world that is just saturated with information and opinions, where do we, and where should we, draw the line between an established fact and someone's personal interpretation of it? That's a question worth thinking about.